Feeling tired, bloated, or struggling with stubborn weight? It might not be your diet, it could be your liver. Over time, your liver can get clogged with fat and toxins, slowing your metabolism and zapping your energy. That's why Pure Health Research created Liver Health Formula, with natural ingredients like milk thistle and artichoke extract to help detox, support fat burning, and boost energy naturally. Tap Shop Now and use code HEALTH for 35% off. Feel lighter, brighter, and more energized, naturally.
African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please.
Quiet Riot.
Hello, and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the director commentary to our midweek special Blu-ray edition. Hallelujah. 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 I'm Alex.
And I'm Kenny.
How are you, Kenny?
I'm very, very well. The sun is shining. It's the weekend. All is well. And I'm not fighting with well-known national retailers on behalf of my other half.
Oh, why? What happened?
I won't bore you with the details. Suffice to say, it involved a relatively new car battery, a well-known high street brand, being shuffled between garages and retail outlets, horrible old sexists, very, very helpful young mechanics, a letter, an email to the CEO.
Oh, for God's sake, I hate it when you end up having to write to the CEO. I'm in the process of that right now with a courier company. Interesting bit of information for you and listeners, which I didn't know. So the classic thing happened where a thing is meant to have been delivered to me, and proof apparently of this having happened is a squiggle that is not my signature at all. And, I had to basically go round the entire neighborhood trying to find out to whom this parcel
it's kind of like
had been
Grindr
delivered.
for 2025, isn't it? Amazon Grindr, where you get to meet random strangers.
But then I found someone helpful at the customer service, and I found out, and this is interesting, so they have a precise geolocation for where the proof of posting happened, for where the handover took place.
Mm-hmm.
So she can trace it to the door, even if it says it was delivered to me, and she could see it wasn't even in my street. It was several blocks away. So they know where it's been delivered by geolocation. And so I'm now in the process of the courier basically trying to go back there and retrieve it and bring it to me, because they can't tell me where it is for legal reasons, I guess, in case I decide to go and start banging on that door.
Have you written to the CEO yet?
No, I'm not there yet, but I am getting there, because it's been like 10 days and the thing on the system still looks as delivered. And it's like, well, it's not delivered, and you now know it's not delivered, and I now know it's not delivered. So
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my other half, Bex, onto the case. She'll get it sorted out in half an hour.
Could you?
There will be blood on the ceiling. There'll be blood in your front door. There'll be blood all over the Amazon delivery van.
Also, I am quite good at complaining. So what happened with your battery? Did it get sorted in the end?
Yeah, one young mechanic came out and he said there is an intermittent fault. I'm replacing it quietly and I'll deal with it internally.
I love people like that.
Just glorious.
And like, this is not your problem, this is our problem, so let me not make it your problem.
Completely. He was a professional. And then, bizarrely, another young mechanic came out who'd seen Bex at the tail end of last week, the first time we took the car in to get it checked. And he went, "Oh, you're back." He was even more apologetic. And anyway, Bex got an email from the CEO yesterday saying, "I'm sorry, and here's 50 quid.
Oh, that's nice. Now, every gorgeous person tuning in, some companies are worth supporting, so please do sign up at ko-fi.com/quietriotpod if you want to help us grow the show and continue to provide all this content free to everyone. Supporters get access to our Discord channel, which is a burgeoning place of conversation, to our live editorial meetings and Ask Us Anything shows, and much more.
Yeah, and on the topic of Ask Us Anything, our next Ask Us Anything's coming up next month.
Ooh.
It's one of the ways that we thank those who subscribe to us on Ko-fi, and it's a properly fun chance for our supporters task is quite literally anything. There'll be politics, of course, but there'll also probably be, gardening, kitchen gadgets, and topics so left field that they haven't yet been invented. If you want to participate, just subscribe on ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod and then wait for the invite to drop into your inbox in the next few weeks. I can't wait.
Now, today we look at what else? The latest chapter in the madness of King Trump.
And we also tread a little bit carefully around the Lucy Connolly story, she being, of course, the woman just released after serving time for posting a particularly horrible tweet.
And finally, for a bit of lighter relief, since you seem to enjoy my cooking conversation with Naomi the other day, I'm going to discuss art with Kenny.
Oh,
what? Yes, even our little troglodyte has views.
Well, that's quite the smorgasbord. Let's dive in. Quiet Riot.
I could describe yesterday's press conference from the Oval Office, but you wouldn't believe me anyway. You have to watch it. In brief, Trump appeared halfway through his decoration, with bits of him still wet with a first coat of primer. He was asked about a US factory in Ukraine being bombed by Russia and said he wasn't happy about it, before, unprompted, showing a photo of Putin and himself that was apparently sent to him by Putin with a request for an autograph. Oh, and the number of wars that he has solved, which had shot up from 4 during his recent visit to Scotland to 7 recently, is now up to 10, if you include pre-wars. Let's have a listen.
Have you talked to Vladimir Putin about the fact that yesterday a big US factory was hit in a Russian airstrike in Ukraine? What's your reaction to that?
I told him I'm not happy about it. And I'm not happy about anything having to do with that war. I settled 7 wars, and actually, if you think about pre-wars, add 3 more, so it would be 10. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack in terms of difficulty. No, I'm not happy about anything about that war. Nothing. Not happy at all.
Now, I am fully prepared for the number to go up again next week in order to include the great Empire-Ewok Accord, the Armistice with the Cylons, and finally sorting out the Gondor-Mordor situation. Perhaps that's why Trump is patchy. He's midway through his transformation from Gandalf the Dusty Rose to Gandalf the Ecru. And all this while wearing an oversized MAGA hat that declared in its traditional all capitals font liar boldface, Trump was right about everything. Perhaps a reference to his complete exoneration by convicted sex trafficker and paedophile enabler Ghislaine Maxwell, recorded just before her coincidental transfer from federal jail to the Hyatt Regency. Kenny, Trump has now moved to the stage of terrorizing political opponents, like John Bolton, and blackmailing private companies like Intel for shares. Isn't this the sort of stuff traditional Republicans would rail against?
Well, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you? Bolton and Intel are both quite interesting case studies in their own right, though, and present, I think, their own little moral dilemmas. I mean, Bolton is a deeply, deeply unpleasant man. Lots of our listeners would probably wish him no well, and considering his political past and his reputation for being a bully, basically, as well as man most likely to star as Super Mario in the next Super Mario movie. So Bolton, if I was Trump and looking for a target to attack who was least likely to attract support, I think Bolton would be it. Nevertheless, big issues sit beyond that. And then Intel, this strange announcement Trump made on Friday saying that the United States government now owned 10% of Intel and it didn't cost it a thing. Again, Intel is a company that's not got its problems to seek. It's really missed the boat when it comes to AI, which is where NVIDIA, the huge AI chip maker, is making billions, has become the most valuable company on the planet. It looks like what's happening is that the American government is actually looking for something in exchange for the billions it said it was going to give to Intel as part of its CHIPS, CHIPS program to try and encourage more American companies to make chips. It's not these two examples of there's more to them than meets the eye. But rewinding backwards, is it the sort of stuff that traditional Republicans would rail against? well, yeah, particularly going in and starting to involve the government in private companies.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense whatsoever unless perhaps you're a scholar of Chairman Mao.
Yes, both things actually, sort of sending the secret police to your political enemy's house in the middle of the night and wresting the means of production from private companies. They are quite Stalinist, aren't they?
They'd be humorous if we were to, if you sat back and wrote a script about what would happen if America drifted into communism. You go, well, you know what? This is probably what happens. It's too ridiculous, though, isn't it? You have to come up with something slightly more believable.
But all of this is also a PR campaign. It's saying to everyone out there offering opinions that are not flattering to the government, or companies which are refusing to play ball and show up at the Oval Office with some gold replica of their product. It's saying to all of them, you better play ball because we have a lot of power. What about the Democrats, Kenny? Gavin Newsom is becoming a sort of one-man resistance front and causing a bit of a splash with his approach. Do you think the "do not try to wrestle a pig in the mud" aphorism no longer applies in America?
That's a really good aphorism to choose, because the advice to don't wrestle a pig in the mud because you're just covered in shit is good advice in normal times.
And the pig will love it.
The pig will love it, of course. And it's absolutely cracking. If you wrestle a pig in the mud, you have allowed yourself to fight a pig on his home territory. And home advantage, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. Mark Twain, who said, never debate an idiot. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Something like that. So, yeah, in normal times, that's good advice. These are not normal times. Normal times would involve a set of sort of recognized rules that both sides are playing by. Normal times would involve a set of people who behaved in a way that was at least notionally rational. And normal times wouldn't have Bolton's house being raided at dawn. And
so what are we talking about here? Like, give listeners a couple of examples, maybe, of...
So Newsom has become the alter ego of Trump. His social media account is now mimicking Trump's style. The crazy-ass capitalization, the random spellings, the exclamation marks, the self-aggrandizement. But he's doing it with one clear aim, and that's simply to poke fun at Trump. What it's also doing is holding up a mirror to Trump and showing the rest of the world, showing MAGA in particular, just how ridiculous, how utterly, utterly ridiculous Trump's outpourings are. If you see them on somebody else's social media feed, they're bonkers. Given that the Democrats have either deliberately or accidentally, I don't know, failed to land a punch on the Trump administration thus far, Newsom is doing, I think, I'm not saying he's doing God's work. That's almost a MAGA thing to say. But he's the only person who seems to be doing anything from that side of the political world that's prompting a response. It's prompting reaction. We're starting to see the J.D. Vances of the world. We're starting to see MAGA spokespeople respond, calling Newsom, childish. It's ridiculous. He needs to grow up.
I mean, it's a fine line, I think, because obviously there's satirizing something, which is a completely legitimate and effective way of dealing with political enemies. But it can stray into the area where you're putting out false information, pretending that it's true. And there I get slightly more uncomfortable, because I think it's that always difficult conundrum that if you alter your character, and it's a very relevant actually to what Starmer is trying to do at the moment, if you alter your character and your political ideology so much that you end up adding to the sort of savagery and lack of civilization of what's going on, are you actually part of the problem? Are you fighting it, or are you becoming part of it? And I say that about Starmer because I am very much, as you know, in two minds about his approach, which seems to me to be to go completely over the top of the rhetoric, but actually in terms of what is happening in reality is that he's processing the claims for asylum much more quickly. The one-in, one-out deal with France is basically the fledgling pilot scheme for a legal, safe and legal route to cross over. It's this strange dichotomy that you're talking like your opposition as a way of disempowering them while doing actually something different.
But isn't that the key difference between Starmer and Newsom? And let me just put as a footnote here, to those listeners who have got issues around some of Newsom's other beliefs, acknowledged, he's not the perfect candidate. To go back to Starmer, what Starmer and Team Starmer are doing at the moment is leaning into the Mail-Telegraph narrative around migrants and following up with an actual change of position, whereas what Newsom is doing is leaning into the Trump narrative to mock. Nobody is thinking that Newsom is making serious policy announcements when he's posting.
I get that. All I'm saying is that for the vast majority of people who don't keep that close an eye on everything, both lead quite a lot of people to the conclusion they're all the same, they're all as bad as each other, which is the slogan of the hard right. That is how they get to you. The precondition to people throwing the dice and taking a risk with something so obviously batshit is that they believe everyone else is the same and doesn't represent their interests. And so when I see progressive people respond to something genuinely horrific proposed by Reform UK, like mass deportations, explains a day that will obviate any notion of the rule of law in this country, if your response as a progressive is immediately to say Starmer is just as bad, you're actually kind of adding to the Reform UK signal. There are ways to object to the rhetoric employed by Starmer, which I do. You know, I think it does add to the negative noise, and I think it has real life consequences for people who are asylum seekers, not to mention for people who just look foreign. I am completely on board with the criticism. I just don't think the criticism should be framed in terms of the actual worldwide far-right slogan, which is, they're all the same.
The points you make are all valid, and I agree. I think, again, there's a clear differentiation between what we're talking about with Starmer in this country and with Newsom overseas. And you know me, I'm a former newspaper editor and I'm a PR person. I'm big on the headlines. I'm big on the stories. And what I'm particularly big on is who the hell is controlling the narrative? Now, at the moment, on the other side of the Atlantic, Trump controls the narrative. And in fact,
and
globally,
Farage does here.
He does. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Newsom is trying to ride that horse, and he's doing it as well as anybody. Over here, the narrative that Starmer is leaning into is controlled, as you say, by Farage, by the Mail.
I think that's fair. If there was another development in the States in the last few days, the transcript and recording of the Ghislaine Maxwell interview have been released. Was there anything surprising in there? I mean...
what took them so long? What took them so long to get Maxwell to say, the guy that can pardon me is a really great guy and I've never seen him do anything bad. Nothing at all.
Does that cut it about someone that we know is not gentlemanly? Like, even his supporters know he's not gentlemanly. So when she comes out and says, oh, he's behaved perfectly every time I've met him, does that...
No. She's a proven liar. At her trial, the judge was pretty coruscating about her unreliability as a witness. She was prepared to say whatever it took to get herself off the hook. I mean, she's a very useful distraction, but the big picture over there is still the fact that the Epstein files, if the files exonerated Trump or didn't cause him any trouble, they'd have been published months ago. They'd have been on billboards throughout DC. We all know what the real story is here. She's a sideshow at this point in time. However, as is the way with cases like this, where the mobsters getting caught out because they diddled their taxes, sometimes it's a sideshow that brings you down. And if Trump continues along this particular route of moving her into a low-security prison, allowing her to work, and then who knows whether a pardon of some sort is granted, at that point, there's a line gets crossed as far as MAGA are concerned.
Quiet, Riot.
Now, this episode is sponsored by Shopify.
Why Shopify? Well, when we started Quiet Riot, there was so much we had to figure out on our own. Even though we'd both got plenty of experience appearing on podcasts, starting our own from scratch threw up a lot of challenges, from finding studios and designing logos to wrestling with contracts and dealing with platforms.
And on a show like this, the to-do list, I can assure you, is never, ever done, and getting help is essential. Otherwise, the process of creating a show can drain the joy of putting out a podcast that we are so proud of.
For some challenges, that means reaching out to friends who can point us in the right direction, hopefully with a smile and an encouraging pat on the back. But for others, you just need the right tool for a particular job.
For millions of businesses, one of those tools is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands like ours just getting started. As we're developing our thinking about Quiet Riot branded merchandise, Shopify was the first name that came to mind to manage the whole process for us.
It's straightforward enough to get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify can help you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style.
It can accelerate your content creation too. Shopify is packed with helpful tools that help you write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography.
Plus, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. It's easy to create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling.
Best of all, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and more. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
So turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your £1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/quietriot. Go to shopify.co.uk/quietriot. That's shopify.co.uk/quietriot.
Quiet Riot.
There's a really weird bit in there where she says that theories that Epstein was murdered are ludicrous. That's her word. And in the same unit, she also says that she doesn't believe that he killed himself. And what other options are left when someone is found hanged? A Windsor knot workshop gone horribly wrong. I mean, no, seriously, what is the theory being advanced
I mean, the
here?
point you make is absolutely spot on.
He definitely wasn't murdered, and he definitely didn't kill himself. So, what happened?
The bigger picture is truth isn't the issue here, of course. Quite clearly, where Maxwell's concerned, truth is never the issue. What is the issue is how useful the story is to Trump and his goon. And the story doesn't go away until she gets what she thinks she's able to get. And until Trump himself shuts his mouth about it, he's his own worst enemy in this respect. The perceived wisdom seems to be that the release of the Maxwell tape is good for Trump. I mean, really? Is it?
I'm not sure. All the analysis I've read is that this is great, it brings MAGA back in line, etc. But actually the story had begun to go away, and this has pushed it right back up and on the front pages. And I find it interesting that some influencers like Loomer and Rychik have reacted by claiming this completely clears Trump. But the second tier ones, the blue ticks replying to them, seem to be less in agreement about that. If you encourage conspiratorial thinking, I think people are always on the lookout for the next conspiracy. Laura Loomer is one post away from being labeled an establishment apparatchik. They all are, because that is the sense they've engendered into the people who follow them. And I also think it's very interesting that most of the top tier influencers, the Joe Rogans and Ben Shapiro's, etc., have not reacted yet. And perhaps that ties into what Brian Klaas was telling us a couple of weeks ago, that this is an attention economy. And if everyone is saying the same thing, if everyone is 100% behind Trump on this stuff, there's no money to be made. So I wonder if we are hours away from one of those major ones coming out and saying, I don't buy this. This is obviously a coached interview, which it is. I mean, as someone who used to not interrogate, but, I used to have hostile information exchange sessions with big companies, let's say. If you listen to the actual interview, you would never open 15 seconds in with a sort of question they open, which can either exonerate Trump or lead to horrible, horrible new cans of worms being opened. And so there is no doubt in my mind that it is pre-agreed and coached, the interview. You just wouldn't open with open-ended questions that you have no idea what the answer might be. And so clearly it's a bunch of bullshit and engineered to ingratiate herself and lighten her incarceration. And I think some of the MAGA crowd, having been deliberately tuned into that way of thinking for so long, they must see that.
The InfoWars world, these people operate most of the time in a way that perhaps Rupert Murdoch operated in the 90s in this country. When they pick a side, they're not picking it a lot of the time because they want to fight the good fight. They're picking it because that's where the win is. That's where they've got something. And if they're holding back, my suspicion is they haven't seen enough evidence to pick a side in this fight. There was something interesting happened this week, and I haven't got that much detail on it, but the White House launched a TikTok account and had a couple of posts, but they didn't turn off comments. And TikTok is not a place to go for the faint-hearted. It's not just the people, putting on makeup and being happy. There is a lot of MAGA presence on TikTok. The responses under the two posts were off the scale in terms of hating on Trump and hating on the links to Epstein. Off the scale. And there was scores and scores and hundreds of them, to the point where I believe the social media boss, the guy in charge, had to resign.
Wow.
That's a grassroots poll of a sort right there. And that's probably, like I say, why the InfoWars world hasn't picked a side, because they know fine well just how dangerous and what an existential threat this is if it goes just slightly wrong for Trump and his hardcore supporters. Quiet riot. Now it's time, alas, really, to peel back the scorched and very angry layers of a case that started with a tweet, turned into a prison sentence, and now has the attention of Donald Trump's inner circle, apparently. The Lucy Connolly saga takes place in a fairly familiar environment where free speech meets flaming hot keyboards and international politics somehow sneaks in through the back door of a deleted post. In July 2024, on the night of the Southport child murders, Connolly took to Twitter and called for mass deportation and the burning of hotels. Now, that tweet lived just over 3 hours, but in that time, it racked over 300,000 views up, and the kind of attention that brings police to your door instead of tweets and likes. She was ultimately charged under Section 19 of the Public Order Act for inciting racial hatred and sentenced to 31 months behind bars. Connolly served about 40% of that time before being released this month, but she's not fading quietly into the background. She's calling herself a political prisoner. She claims the tweet was a grief-fueled outburst posted because she'd lost her own child in tragic circumstances. If this isn't enough of a mess, enter Team Trump. Connolly's case has reached the radar of US conservatives. Her allies say she's in touch with Trump administration officials and is even eyeing legal action against UK authorities for what she claims is political censorship. Welcome to Britain's most combustible free speech case in years. Alex, before we go any further, we should probably remind ourselves of the context in which Connolly posted that fateful tweet.
Yeah, so this goes back to the 29th of July last year. 3 children were murdered and 10 others injured in a mass stabbing attack at a dance studio in Southport in Merseyside, where they were doing a Taylor Swift themed dance class. And in the hours that followed, basically social media speculation ran rife, made a lot of false claims about the immigrant asylum seeker even status of the killer, plenty of the usual people amplified that. Famously, Farage, based on a tweet by one of the Tate brothers. So it got ugly very, very quickly and before people really knew any details. And details, remember, could not be revealed at the time because of the age of the person that had been arrested, meaning that their identity had to be protected under the rules as they were, although the rules have now been relaxed for the police in cases like this. It's useful to remember the new government had been in post for 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks at that point. I found it very interesting to go back to Judge Melbourne Inman's sentencing remarks at the initial case, where he said that in relation to culpability, both prosecution and defense agreed that Lucy Connolly intended to incite violence.
Yeah.
And in relation to harm, it fell in the highest category. It was pertinent that the timing of the publication was a particularly sensitive climate where violence was beginning to break out on this issue. And it's also, I think, instructive because a lot of the times this gets slightly salami sliced and selective quotes appear. So can you remind us, Kenny, of exactly what it was, the words that Connolly tweeted?
I mean, I think this is important, and let me post a trigger warning. We're going to repeat the key quote, and it's not pleasant, but there was a huge amount of deeply unpleasant stuff swilling around on social media at this time. But the tweet that got Connolly into particular trouble read as follows. Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the fucking hotels full of the bastards for all I care. And while you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will now have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it. When it came to the court appearance, of course, though, she did plead guilty, didn't she?
Yeah, although part of her appeal, having changed her legal team, was to claim that she got very bad advice, was stitched up by a combination of the police and her counsel. And again, I find it interesting to go back to the sentencing remarks from the original trial, which took particular notice of the fact that she was sending messages on WhatsApp, which included one that, I quote, raging tweet about burning down hotels has bit me on the arse, lol. And then also messaged a friend to say that if she got arrested, she would, and I quote again, play the mental health card. And I think that throws light a little bit on her state of mind at the time, although sometimes we can react in flippant ways, that can happen. But in her appeal of the sentence, because she did mount an appeal of her sentence, Lord Justice Holroyd said in very, very unequivocal terms that they found her evidence incredible. That was the word. And I quote again from the judgment, her evidence to this court showed her to be intelligent and articulate, with strong views and a deep mistrust of anyone who might be regarded as a person in authority telling her what to do. And they found that her counsel at the time had kept meticulous notes and had created a note explaining everything to her about pleading guilty and what the likely starting point of the sentence might be.
And I appreciate we've got enough of people that are born in the UK that are, do awful things, but if we can just stop one child, something bad happening to them, that's one. One is too many, isn't it? Even if it's only one and I don't think for 1 minute that every single person coming over on a boat and living in a hotel is a rapist or a murderer. I'm sure the vast majority of them are really, really decent people just wanting to build a better life. But even if there's one or two in there, that's too many for our children.
So do I think, hand on heart, that Lucy Connolly was chosen as a particularly egregious instance of what was quite widespread during those few days and made an example of? Yes, I do. Do I think that is a bad thing for the justice system to do in terms of public policy? No, I don't. Part of the point of the arrests and charges that went on was to dampen more violent disorder. So quite rightly, a sample of the worst instances were chosen of behaviors that the police needed to crack down on in order to avoid a lot more damage and the possibility of innocent people getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Was Connolly in a way unlucky that a couple of days later the riots culminated in people trying to set fire to hotels housing these vulnerable people, precisely as her post described? Maybe she was, but not as unlucky as the people in those hotels, fearing for their lives, fleeing through back windows, and for whom she showed scant regard.
Absolutely.
One could argue that it was this case becoming a cause célèbre that has helped crystallize hotels housing asylum seekers as a legitimate target for violent protest. That is still going on a year later. Now, as a big mouth who often fires things into the social media sphere that I regret seconds later, I do have some sympathy. But at the same time, I look at her history of saying stuff like this. I look at her private lol reaction. I look at the words themselves, and I have no doubt as to what motivated them. It wasn't sympathy for the victims, or heartbreak, or shock as to the senseless loss of life. It was a pre-existing grievance against an entire group of people into which she shoehorned dodgy facts in order to say something that got her attention, and that it did. You can't then distance yourself and say, well, I only published that because I was angry. Twitter is not connected to your unfiltered brain. You make a conscious decision to take that anger and type it out and transmit it. Words have consequences, actually, especially angry words. And every single newspaper championing Connolly has shown in the past that it gets that when it comes to extreme views emanating from anyone with more of a tan and a difficult last name. She's done an interview with Alison Pearson that I had to sit through for work, uncomfortable as I found it. And she kind of doubles down on that. She says, I know most people in these hotels are decent people who are just looking for a better life, but even if one among them is a danger to our children, that's one too many. That's what she concludes. So it's okay to target an entire group for the hypothetical sins of one among them, while she's also doing a lot of special pleading about how she was punished for what a lot of people were doing. So zero tolerance for their fictional crimes, but full understanding for her actual ones. Why? Like, what is the benign interpretation of her saying that? I mean, the only difference I can discern is that she feels entitled to better treatment, a better class of rights than an asylum seeker, based in this case on a reckless bit of disinformation that happened to fit her prejudice.
Yeah.
You know, Lucy Connolly has essentially decided that this country belongs to her in some way, and she gets to decide who gets set on fire and who doesn't. And she communicated that wish knowingly to people who were out there looking for precisely such a rationale for their grievance and their violent tendencies. That is the bit that is not okay. The rest is fucking dressing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the point you make is absolutely spot on.
The tabloids can tell us all about how she's lovely and ordinary and runs a daycare and jogs and is a great mum and has suffered tragedy in her past and took her dog for a walk after posting what she posted. And all of that may be true, but she wasn't punished for any of that. She was punished for telling people it was okay to set fire to a building with human beings sleeping in it because their life has no value. And the fact that she did that between having a cuppa and shampooing the dog makes it more chilling, not less.
I agree. From a media perspective, there are other delineating factors as well, though. There's the fact that her husband was a Tory councillor. She herself used to be a childminder. She fits a particular box when it comes to developing a narrative from a media perspective. The idea of two-tier justice has been discussed on this programme many times, but the idea of two-tier media treatment is just as valid. And of course, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, she came out of prison and was dropped straight into the middle of a summer of particularly relevant media headlines. And from her perspective, she probably view that as being very helpful in many ways, because it's what's going to keep her, if not on the front pages, it will certainly keep her on the opinion pages. And it may well give her that break into America as well, where they do culture wars better than anybody else in so many ways. Quiet riot. Now,
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Thanks to them for sponsoring today's show. If there's something that's not in short supply these days, it's opinions and advice. Heck, it's what this show majors in. Who should I vote for? What coffee maker should I use? How do I stop AI taking my job away? It can all be a bit overwhelming, and if you're looking for advice on something as serious as mental health, it really is important to find advice you can really trust. Poor mental health can be utterly debilitating, and getting trustworthy support is, I think, the essential first step in trying to turn things around, whether you've experienced major trauma or are just struggling a bit with life's daily challenges. So, how do you cut through all the noise? Well, that brings us to BetterHelp, which, as well as having more than 5,000 therapists in the UK, is also the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people. It's popular, an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 tells its own story, and BetterHelp makes it incredibly easy to fit therapy into your busy life. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/quietriot. That's betterhelp.com/quietriot.
Quiet riot.
I had a depiction on the front pages of some newspapers. The front of the Sun declares in capitals, "Freed mum on jail ordeal." And I have found that very interesting, that having felt that they could do nothing but condemn the violence and the disorder that was going on at the time, and that was a very good thing, and something that surprised me, how all the newspapers were unified in condemning the thuggery that was going on at the time. There has been a campaign that has lasted for an entire year going on in the background to somehow make her a poster girl and a martyr of this notion of two-tier justice, to define her by her ordinariness and motherhood, rather than the obvious rage that she harbors and the darkness that seeps through. And the principal architect of that has been Alison Pearson in The Telegraph, who has written about this practically every week and has ended up being the one that interviews her. And I wanted listeners to have a listen to one particular bit of that interview.
You know, the amount of people that, for example, on social, you're a racist, you're a bigot, and it's boring now. You know, that I feel that it's lost its meaning as a word now because it's just thrown around, bandied around. So I was just almost like preempting it. Yeah, I know you're going to come back to me and say, oh, you don't like immigrants, you're a racist, this, that, the other. But as you say, it's not about that. It's just about making sure that the people coming into our country are vetted and that, you know, we know that they're safe in society.
You see, I find the victimhood really quite revealing here. So what Connolly is saying is that her post went overboard because she finds people, and this is her word, so boring that respond to stuff by saying this is racist or you're a bigot, that she was preempting their response with her tweet. In short, it's hypothetical liberals responding to blame for what she describes as not her finest hour. And I find that so epigrammatic of attitudes among the hard right out there. This notion that liberals forced me into this position of rage and hatred because you didn't take my entitlement seriously enough. I don't know how you address it. I don't know what you do about it. Clearly, the entire media corps has a hard-on for more disorder because it's got great visuals and gets them high viewership numbers and lots of clicks. They seem to almost be actively agitating for it, along with people like Farage. And the one thing Alison Pearson is right about in her write-up to accompany that interview is that the situation has shifted since last summer. Lucy Connolly would have been treated differently if she tweeted that this summer, I think, because there has been a movement to say this kind of hate is okay. It's understandable. And that shows that within a year, we have really gone into a very different direction as a country.
As an aside, it's just a brief aside, but I do want to ask the question whether she gets any sort of get out of jail free card, to use that phrase very deliberately, because she lost a young child in deeply, deeply tragic circumstances with medical malpractice and all sorts of horrible things. Do we as humans give her a little bit of a pass on that front?
She got a little bit of a pass on that front, Kenny. And again, I don't want to repeat the full sentencing remarks in the original case and the multi-page appeal judgment. But the point is that 3 years was the starting point for this kind of offense in this kind of gravity. And there were lots of things that went to adjusting it upwards towards the 7-year maximum, because it is a 7-year maximum for it. And she got a lot of credit that kind of reduced it back down to the 3-year level. And one of the factors was the fact that she lost a child in tragic circumstances, and this might have been particularly triggering for her. And, the fact that she pled guilty and expressed remorse for her actions also got her a significant discount. So when she comes out now and says, I didn't mean any of it, I don't think I did anything wrong, she used the system to get credit for her extenuating circumstances. It's not like they were ignored.
There's something else that struck me, particularly when I saw that American conservatives were reaching out to her for their own ends, presumably. That was the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Kyle Rittenhouse, if listeners remember, is a young man whose journey started by shooting 3 men in Wisconsin, killing 2 of them. And that took him to global prominence via meetings with the likes of Tucker Carlson and even with Donald Trump himself. He became a cause célèbre for a particular sort of right-wing player in the States. I mean, let's talk culture wars. The parallels with Rittenhouse are there. If we look for them, it starts with some sort of an action that polarizes opinion in no small part because it's weaponized. It's weaponized by the media. It's weaponized by the political world. It's weaponized by campaigners. Then, as we've seen this week in media in Britain, the bad guy, the bad woman in this case, she becomes a hero in some people's eyes. There's a redemption arc playing out here if you were scripting it. She becomes championed in significant parts of the media, and at that point becomes a standard bearer for breaking the law when it suits the right people. I mean, I really should say the right-wing people, but the parallels are there. This story has played out before with different accents and different individuals involved. But at the end of the day, it's a culture war. She becomes a tool in culture wars, and she probably doesn't realize just how perilous a situation she's in.
Before we leave this topic, I wanted to say BB King 6, Elsie Stancombe 7, Alice da Silva Aguiar 9, as well as the other 5 children and the 2 adults trying to protect them who suffered life-changing trauma. They didn't merit a mention by name in any of the front pages dedicated to Lucy Connolly's ordeal. And get this, nor did the 1-year anniversary of the attack itself get a single column inch on a single of their front pages on the 29th of July just gone. I checked very, very carefully. And perhaps this is the bitterest pill to swallow, how Lucy Connolly has somehow been elevated to being the real victim of that sequence of events. So let me say it once more. BB King 6, Elsie Stancombe 7, and Alice da Silva Aguiar 9.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
And now to lighten things a little, a modest little subject to round off today's show. Has tech killed art?
What was the interest to you then in that Campbell suit, and what gave you the idea of doing that?
Oh, I used to eat it every day. I still do, so.
Kenny dabbles in photography, and as everyone who dabbles in photography knows, especially when they're not a very good photographer like me, you fix most of it afterwards, as it were. You crop it slightly differently and maybe adjust the lighting a little bit. I mean, I'm not talking about Uber filters, but you can adjust the framing and the light and the color, etc. But you're a much more serious photographer than I am, Kenny. So how...
I'm not serious about anything,
Yeah,
Alex.
I know, but you are a more dedicated photographer. So how are you finding your habits have changed with the availability of so many post-production tools, let's call them?
Oh, the tools are glorious. They revolutionized my ability to take pictures. When I was a kid, you had a roll of film, 12 exposures, 36 exposures, ASA 100 if you were lucky. And if you were going to print your own prints, you shot black and white film, I'd shoot Agfa, Chrome, whatever. I remember all the names of the films. But you had to get it right in the camera because your abilities in the darkroom were somewhat limited. And if you were sending it off to Boots to get processed, you just knew that 11 out of 12 pictures would come back with horrible little oval stickers in that would say things like object obscuring lens or something else that basically meant you shit, give it up, take up drawing or something. It's horrible.
Yes, the oval most of the time was your thumb.
Completely. I've got more pictures of my thumb than I've got pictures of my face. But the post-production side of photography has made things easier in some ways and less rewarding in some ways. But at the end of the process, you've got a much better chance of coming away with something that you don't mind hanging on your wall or sticking in an album or at least looking at once in a while, as opposed to the old packets of little shiny prints that I'd have where 95% of them you'd look at and go, do you know what, I should just bin that. That's embarrassing. There are people out there, and I know one or two of them, who still shoot film in much the same way that you still listen to vinyl as part of the process that is far more appealing to them. And whether the output is the same quality or not isn't the key issue. The process
It's a different medium.
Completely.
CD or a download is a different medium to analog vinyl being played. And when you know certain recordings very well, you can hear it's a different medium. It's a different sound. And so I have tons of downloaded stuff. I have like an entire hard drive that is even bigger than the record collection on my walls. So I never denigrate, and my CDs are just as many as my records. So I never denigrate a format because as things develop, certain music is only available in certain formats.
That's
but
right.
I would never buy really the CD version of a 50s LP if I can have the LP, because I find that the process of digitization alters the quality and metal and timbre of the sound quite significantly. It is unforgiving for mistakes. It's a much harsher sound, etc., etc. So I'm all for the original format of everything being preserved because they have different qualities.
But the process of listening, I used to love vinyl as well. The process of putting on an LP, the lifting of the lid, if you had a lid on your turntable, the gentle removal of 12 inches of black plastic or a picture disc if you were really lucky, plopping it onto the turntable, gently lifting up your expensive tone arm and your cartridge, dropping it down, and then realize that you haven't taken the dust off the LP from the last time and being very ashamed. That whole process, almost like a tea ceremony for music, is such an integral part.
And also, I mean, I don't know if it's the same with the sort of music you listen to, but also the process of listening to it while reading the notes, the lyrics, holding the physical item, which is itself, I think, something of artistic value in the case of many, many record covers. I mean, Andy Warhol cut his teeth doing sketches of record covers. All of that, to me, adds to the experience. So what's the equivalent in photography, now that you have experienced, I guess, both ways of doing it? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each in comparison?
It's been a fantastic learning curve because the tools over the years that have become available, thanks to technology, for people who enjoy their photography are unimaginable. And what it's done is allowed me to learn about light, about composition, about contrast, and actually about emotion as well, which is central to any piece of art of any sort. There isn't just no way on God's green earth I'd have been able to pick up a fraction of that knowledge without the technology. It would have taken too long. I would have had to dedicate too much time to it. I'd have probably had to go and pay for a course, read books and such like. It's been an education, but of course, when it's a hobby, it doesn't feel like an education. It feels like time off from work, but you're still learning. And you're still learning every time you go out with a camera. You're still learning every time you pick up a different lens. You're still learning every time you pick up a different camera. The camera I've got at the moment is a really good Canon camera. It's got a phenomenal resolution, and it's too good for most of the stuff that I do.
That's interesting.
The resolution is so high that if you don't get your breathing right, or if your heart beats at the wrong point when you're taking a picture, it will pick that vibration up, and your picture will appear ever so slightly blurry. If it wasn't such a high resolution camera, that wouldn't be nearly as big an issue. It wouldn't be sensitive enough to pick up the vibrations. So there's a whole set of different levels.
So
that you can
dead
dive
people
into.
take better photos, is what you're trying to say.
That's a great title for a book, isn't it? My other half, Bex, has taken up painting just in the last couple of months. Her cousin is a professional artist and a very good one as well. And Bex went out one day, got some canvases, some cheap canvases and some acrylic paint, and started to put down on canvas whatever, abstract work. The second thing she produced is actually really very, very good indeed. It's blues and aquamarines and some gold leaf, and it's hanging on a wall in the house. But what really occurred to me the other day was when I was looking at it, it's become really very difficult, if not impossible these days, to tell the difference between something that somebody's created using a brush or a spray can or a knife, a palette knife, and what somebody's created using a camera or simply using, of course, AI. The blending of different techniques and different backgrounds has become all pervasive. But there's something particularly uplifting about the fact that Bex can produce something that's good enough to hang on the wall without using any of the tools that I would have to use if I wanted to do something the same using my camera. At the end of the day, if it speaks to us, it's all art, isn't it?
I guess so. I think there is the concept of what you want to do, and then the skill of being able to produce something that gives life to that concept. And I guess what modern technology does is it makes the process of turning the concept in your head into a visual much simpler for most people. But there is something to the process itself that I think cannot be replicated and lost if the process wasn't there.
I agree. I think there's three elements to what we do when we produce something that we consider to be art. There's the imagination side, which you've highlighted. You have to create. It doesn't work if you haven't created. It's not art if I've dreamed it, but I haven't put it down on paper.
Exactly.
And at the point where it's shared, becomes art for us all. And then probably most importantly, it has to fire up emotions. If it's not firing up emotions of some sort, be they rage or love or wonder, if it's not doing that, doesn't pass the test of art. And that, where we are at the moment, is where a lot of the technology still falls down. It needs that human element to really sing.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it can ever have that. I remember seeing a documentary decades ago that was a real light bulb moment for young Alex, where it was explained that really the thing that truly sets us apart is the capacity for abstract thought. There are some species of primate that they think do a little bit of abstract thought, but they don't think there is anything else that looks at a cloud and thinks that looks like an elephant, you know, or that sought to draw in caves. Something that reminds them of something else, something that is a representation of something else. And actually, it is that process of taking the abstract and turning it into something that is shareable that is not just art. It is the thing that makes us human. And so I guess if technology ever gets to the stage of being able to do that, it would be cognizant. It would have consciousness. And I'm not sure it will or can get there. It seems to me that that's the crux of it. The crux of it is not for the drawing or the photograph to be perfect, but for the drawing or the photograph or the music to be the realization of something abstract that you want to share with other people. And that's why a tool that alters the lighting or the contrast on a photograph is not the same as AI inventing something based on your instruction. Something is lost, farming that process out to something that doesn't have your soul, as it were.
Take that, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Quiet, riot. And with that, another Sunday school closes its doors gently and sneaks off for a cuppa, or perhaps something slightly cooler.
Thank you for joining us today and for chatting with us on Blue Sky and on our subscribers' Discord feed as well. We love you all very much.
And don't forget to sign up on ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod for access to those live chats, that Discord channel, and our upcoming Ask Us Anything session.
And whether you subscribe or not, you can still help by sharing your favorite episode with a pal. The next one will be our regular Thursday extravaganza, and our guest on that is Labour MP Andrew Lewin, so don't miss that.
Fabulous. Until then, we love you lots.
Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alexandre. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Connolly. And edited by me, Alex Reese. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot. And somebody's going to get the backside kicked as well.
Kenny, you were bang on at the start. That was indeed incredibly boring. No, I mean that. Can we go again and do a slightly shorter version? Because I genuinely lost the will to live during that.
I knew I should have written this one down. There was so much.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.